Sirach 29 on lending and borrowing. He that shows mercy will lend to his neighbor, and he that strengthens him with his hand keeps the commandments. Lend to your neighbor in the time of his need, and in turn repay your neighbor promptly. Confirm your word and keep faith with him, and on every occasion you will find what you need. Many persons regard a loan as a windfall and cause trouble to those who help them. A man will kiss another's hands until he gets a loan, and will lower his voice in speaking of his neighbor's money. But at the time for repayment, he will delay, and will pay in words of unconcern, and will find fault with the time. If the lender exert pressure, he will hardly get back half, and will regard that as a windfall. If he does not, the borrower has robbed him of his money, and he has needlessly made him his enemy. He will repay him with curses and reproaches, and instead of glory will repay him with dishonor. Because of such wickedness, therefore, many have refused to lend. They have been afraid of being defrauded needlessly. Nevertheless, be patient with a man in humble circumstances, and do not make him wait for your alms. Help a poor man for the commandment's sake, and because of his need, do not send him away empty. Lose your silver for the sake of a brother and a friend, and do not let it rust under a stone and be lost. Lay up your treasure according to the commandments of the Most High, and it will profit you more than gold. Store up almsgiving in your treasury, and it will rescue you from all affliction. More than a mighty shield and more than a heavy spear, it will fight on your behalf against your enemy. On guaranteeing debts. A good man will be surety for his neighbor, but a man who has lost his sense of shame will fail him. Do not forget all the kindness of your surety, for he has given his life for you. A sinner will overthrow the prosperity of his surety, and one who does not feel grateful will abandon his rescuer. Being surety has ruined many people who were prosperous, and has shaken them like a wave of the sea. It has driven men of power into exile, and they have wandered among foreign nations. The sinner who has fallen into suretyship and pursues gain will fall into lawsuits. Assist your neighbor according to your ability, but take heed to yourself lest you fall. Home and hospitality. The essentials for life are water and bread and clothing and a house to cover one's nakedness. Better is the life of a poor man under the shelter of his roof than sumptuous food in another man's house. Be content with little or much. It is a miserable life to go from house to house, and where you are a stranger, you may not open your mouth. You will play the host and provide drink without being thanked, and besides this, you will hear bitter words. Come here, stranger, prepare the table, and if you have anything at hand, let me have to eat it. Give place, stranger, to an honored person. My brother has come to stay with me. I need my house. These things are hard to bear for a man who has feeling, scolding about lodging and the reproach of a moneylender. Sirach 30. He who loves his son will whip him often, in order that he may rejoice at the way he turns out. He who disciplines his son will profit him, and will boast of him among acquaintances. He who teaches his son will make his enemies envious, and will glory in him in the presence of his friends. The father may die, and yet he is not dead, for he has left behind him one like himself. While alive he saw and rejoiced, and when he died he was not grieved. He has left behind him an avenger against his enemies, and one to repay the kindness of his friends. He who spoils his son will bind up his wounds, and his feelings will be troubled at every cry. A horse that has untamed turns out to be stubborn, and a son unstrained turns out to be willful. Pamper a child, and he will frighten you. Play with him, and he will give you grief. Do not laugh with him, lest you have sorrow with him, and in the end you will gnash your teeth. Give him no authority in his youth, and do not ignore his errors. Bow down his neck in his youth, and beat his sides while he is young, lest he become stubborn and disobey you, and you have sorrow of soul from him. Discipline your son, and take pains with him, that you may not be offended by his shamelessness. Better off is a poor man who is well and strong in constitution than a rich man who is severely afflicted in body. Health and soundness are better than all gold, and a robust body than countless riches. There is no wealth better than health of body, and there is no gladness above joy of heart. Death is bitter than a miserable life, and eternal rest than chronic sickness. Good things poured out upon a mouth that is closed are like offerings of food placed upon a grave. Of what use to an idol is an offering of fruit? For it can neither eat nor smell. So is he who is afflicted by the Lord. He sees with his eyes and groans, like an eunuch who embraces a maiden and groans. Do not give yourself over to sorrow, and do not afflict yourself deliberately. Gladness of heart is the life of man, and the rejoicing of a man is length of days. Delight your soul and comfort your heart, and remove sorrow far from you, for sorrow has destroyed many, and there is no profit in it. Jealousy and anger shorten life, and anxiety brings an old age too soon. A man of cheerful and good heart will give heed to the food he eats. Sirach 31. Right attitude towards riches. Wakefulness over wealth wastes away one's flesh, and anxiety about it removes sleep. Wakeful anxiety prevents slumber, and a severe illness carries off sleep. The rich man toils as his wealth accumulates, and when he rests, he fills himself with his dainties. The poor man toils as his livelihood diminishes, and when he rests, he becomes needy. He who loves gold will not be justified, and he who pursues money will be led astray by it. Many have come to ruin because of gold, and their destruction has met them face to face. It is a stumbling block to those who are devoted to it, and every fool will be taken captive by it. Blessed is the rich man who is found blameless, and who does not go after gold. Who is he? And we will call him blessed, for he has done wonderful things among his people. Who has been tested by it and found perfect? Let it be for him a ground for boasting, who has had the power to transgress and did not transgress, and to do evil and did not do it, his prosperity will be established, and the assembly will relate his acts of charity. Table etiquette. Are you seated at the table of a great man? Do not be greedy at it, and do not say, "There is certainly much upon it." Remember that a greedy eye is a bad thing. What has been created more greedy than the eye? Therefore it sheds tears from every face. Do not reach out your hand for everything you see, and do not crowd your neighbor at the dish. Judge your neighbor's feelings by your own, and in every matter be thoughtful. Eat like a human being what is set before you, and do not chew greedily, lest you be hated. Be the first to stop eating for the sake of good manners, and do not be insatiable, lest you give offense. If you are seated among many persons, do not reach out your hand before they do. How ample a little is for a well-disciplined man. He does not breathe heavily upon his bed. Healthy sleep depends on moderate eating. He rises early and feels fit. The distress of sleeplessness and of nausea and colic are with the glutton. If you are overstuffed with food, get up in the middle of the meal and you will have relief. Listen to me, my son, and do not disregard me. And in the end, you will appreciate my words. In all your work, be industrious, and no sickness will overtake you. Men will praise the one who is liberal with food, and their testimony to his excellence is trustworthy. The city will complain of the one who is niggardly with food, and their testimony to his niggardliness is accurate. Temperance with drinking wine. Do not aim to be valiant over wine, for wine has destroyed many. Fire and water prove the temper of steel, so wine tests hearts in the strife of the proud. Wine is like life to men, if you drink it in moderation. What is life to a man who is without wine? It has been created to make men glad. Wine drunk in season and intemperately is rejoicing of heart and gladness of soul. Wine drunk to excess is bitterness of soul, with provocation and stumbling. Drunkenness increases the anger of a fool to his injury, reducing his strength and adding wounds. Do not reprove your neighbor at a banquet of wine, and do not despise him in his merrymaking. Speak no word of reproach to him, and do not afflict him by making demands of him. Sirach 32. Etiquette at a banquet. If they make you master of the feast, do not exalt yourself. Be among them as one of them. Take good care of them, and then be seated. When you have fulfilled your duties, take your place, that you may be merry on their account, and receive a wreath for your excellent leadership. Speak, you who are older, for it is fitting that you should, but with accurate knowledge, and do not interrupt the music. Where there is entertainment, do not pour out talk. Do not display your cleverness out of season. A ruby seal in a setting of gold is a concert of music at a banquet of wine. A seal of emerald in a rich setting of gold is the melody of music with good wine. Speak, young man, if there is need of you, but no more than twice, and only if asked. Speak concisely, say much in few words, be as one who knows and yet holds his tongue. Among the great, do not act as their equal, and when another is speaking, do not babble. Lightning speeds before the thunder, and approval precedes a modest man. Leave in good time, and do not be the last. Go home quickly, and do not linger. Amuse yourself there, and do what you have in mind, but do not sin through proud speech. For these things, bless him who made you, and satisfies you with his good gifts. The Providence of God. He who fears the Lord will accept his discipline, and those who rise early to seek him will find favor. He who seeks the law will be filled with it, but the hypocrite will stumble at it. Those who fear the Lord will form true judgments, and like a light they will kindle righteous deeds. A sinful man will shun reproof, and will find a decision according to his liking. A man of judgment will not overlook an idea, and an insolent and proud man will not cower in fear. Do nothing without deliberation, and when you have acted, do not regret it. Do not go on a path full of hazards, and do not stumble over stony ground. Do not be overconfident on a smooth way, and give good heed to your paths. Guard yourself in every act, for this is the keeping of the commandments. He who believes the law gives heed to the commandments, and he who trusts the Lord will not suffer loss.